Good evening, all. If I could have order, please. Welcome to Governance and Resources for Derbyshire Dales District Council. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Buttle, Flitter and Shelley, and substituting is Councillor Franks, Linthwaite and Maelstrom.
Thank you very much for that. And just, could I put a motion as well to change the order slightly to move item 12 into the slot for item 6, if we may, please, and that's the street naming and numbering policy, to move that forward for conveniences.
Agreed.
Is that agreed? Yep. Thank you, everyone. First one, public participation. We don't actually have anyone. We were going to have Councillor O'Brien, but I do have a statement to read out from him. Good evening, colleagues. I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you this evening in relation to the car parking report. I should say at the outset that I fully support the administration's commitment to consultation before major policy changes are made. However, I believe that it should always be clear that what the objectives of any change in policy are, as this helps residents and businesses understand the logic behind the detail of what is being proposed. I have several issues with the report before you, and it is a little disappointing that there has not been adequate opportunity to discuss it fully before it was published. I do not think the proposal to move some car parks to pay by phone only has the support of many or even a majority of members. As the report states, 52% of payments are still made by cash, and this remains the preferred method for many people, particularly amongst the older generation. Removing this option is also likely to discriminate against those who do not have a mobile phone with them or have not downloaded the Pay by Phone app. The widespread opposition, including by the Council, to the recent closure of the last bank in Bakewell, indicates that we are far from being a totally digital economy locally. The statement that's in Hathersage that there is parking also available on street for visitors to use is completely at odds with reality. Residents in the village suffer continually from visitors parking outside their homes day and night, and for the last 4 years I've been working with the County Councillor Alistair Sutton to address this issue, hopefully through some form of residents parking scheme as in Bakewell. This statement will undermine residents' confidence in District Council, and I would urge the committee to delete it from the report and reassure residents of Hathersage that the Council fully understands the issues they face. Similarly, in Hathersage, the Oddfellows Road car park is also important for residents from nearby villages who wish to pop to the post office, chemists, butchers, greengrocers, bakers, grocers and other local facilities. There are less than 20 on street short-term parking spaces available. To propose that residents from Grindleford, Abney, Bradwell, more distant parts of Hathersage and other Hope Valley villages should be faced with a 10% increase in parking fees when shopping for essential goods and services, whilst Matlock residents get to enjoy free parking, is frankly absurd, and again would undermine confidence in the Council. Please dismiss this idea out of hand and look to consistency across all our communities. Thank you for your understanding. Thank you. That's from Councillor O'Brien on the item 6 around the phase 1 of the car park consultation. Do I have approval of minutes from the previous session? Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, sorry. It's been moved by Councillor Lees.
Do I have a second? Oh,
Councillor Ripton, I think, had his hand up first.
Oh, Councillor Ripton. There we go. You beat them. Thank you very much. All those for, please. Thank you. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Thank you. And what was the? It's approved. Thank you very much. Cheers for that. Thank you. On to the next item. Any items of interest that members are required to declare? No. Thank you all. And then on to item 12, now brought forward, street naming and numbering policy. Please, if you could. Thank you.
Yes, the street name and numbering policy is really something just fleshing out and bringing something forward that we do nationally already and we do internally already, but just put it in a document to share with everybody that we've got a sort of Bible as to what we do. We already follow the National Data Entry Conventions and the Street Naming Numbering Code of Practice. So I say this is just so that we've got something to guide us and something to show people what we do and why we do it.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions at all around the report? No? Do I have any supporter at all? Or? Thank you, Councillor Ripton. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Franks. And could I put that to the vote then, please? Okay, everyone for? Anyone against or no abstentions? I think that was unanimous. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. That's supported. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Thank you. Cheers, Suzanne. Thank you very much. Can we now move to item 6, back onto the agenda lineup, phase 1 car park review consultation to follow. Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst the detail of the main review is lengthy and complex, I intend, if that's all right with you, Chair, to keep my presentation relatively brief, given the decision in front of members tonight is to decide whether we go to consultation or not on the recommendations that are outlined in the main review. And just for the purpose of members who have not been involved in the working group, the review of the car parks was started in July 2022, and it was determined by a scope that was agreed by council at the time, and a working group was formed. It was a cross-party working group that involved both members and officers, and from being involved in that group, I have to say that all individuals in there work collectively and work very well towards trying to find a response to the scope that was outlined. I appreciate there are some challenging decisions that members may need to make in time on this. It has been a very complex and detailed review. And I'm also aware that there is a recommendation or an amendment to the recommendation in front of members today. And what I would say on that recommendation is that if members are minded to approve that recommendation, then the working group will do its best to work towards the new parameters and requirements of that recommendation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report as well. Don't open it to the floor for questions at all. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been on this working group. I think looks like I'm the only one here from the working group, actually, from when it first started. And like Ash says, there's been a lot of work's been carried out on this car park review, and we thought we'd about got it right, to be fair. And but listening to our other members and other members that's been talking, I don't think we've quite got it right yet. So I'd like to see it deferred until we'd had another workshop or something, so we could get it a bit clearer before we proceeded. That's my view on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say I do fully support the idea of properly firming up the aims before we then go back to the detail and back to public consultation on the specifics, because I think that will enable us to sell it much better when we do have the full list of changes.
Thank you. Are there any questions before we enter debate? Because sorry, no, you're fine. Are there any other questions at all from people? Or... No. Oh, of course, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it was deferred, I'd sooner see it deferred and get it right before it goes out to consultation. Else we're going to be back to square one again. So that'd be my preference, is probably to defer it for a couple of months, probably till May. Don't know whether that'd be acceptable or not, and rather than bring it, because it's up for April at the moment, I think, isn't it? Is it going out for consultation?
I think it may be worth discussing the proposal actually with David, because I think it's slightly
I
changed
think
the wording around that. Do you want to bring that up, David?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we had quite a thorough discussion of the proposals last night, and I think the report was very comprehensive and thorough, and provided a lot of detail about individual car parks and individual charges and the proposals for how to charge in individual car parks. And as such, it represented a huge amount of work, and I think the working group and the officers and the councillors have to be congratulated on the outcome of that work, which enabled, well, in the meeting last night, we could have a very open and good discussion about the aims and principles by which that were being followed and whether they were applicable in all cases, and whether there were others as well that might need to be considered. But I think the outcome of that meeting was that we felt that it was too early to put the actual prices forward in a consultation, but we were at a stage where we had aims and principles, and I think Lucy is correct. I think possibly they should be put back to the working group to tighten those up, and we could then move forward with a consultation which just focused in on those aims and principles. So we looked at the policy effectively that we were applying in coming to car parking charges and the means of levying those charges, whether we do it pay by phone or whether we do it using a cash machine or whatever. Also, though I think there was some view in the room that, or in the meeting, that we should also review. We could review in a consultation the three phases or the objectives laid down in the different phases to determine whether those had public support as well. So overall, therefore, we felt that there were additional, probably the putting forward the charges. It was too early, and it was probably needed to be we needed to have full understanding of the impact of the aim, the principles by which charging would take place on the public before we went ahead and put those charges out. And therefore we wrote a new recommendation, and we've also taken further consultation on that. So there are now two revisions to the wording in that recommendation. So the recommendation now reads: the committee notes the report of the car parking member working group and approves the recommendation to undertake a public consultation during spring 2024, rather than April. The purpose of the consultation is to provide Derbyshire Dales residents the opportunity to comment on the principles and aims of the review. And secondly, that the car parking working group will be tasked to review and endorse all consultation materials prior to issue, which would allow the working group to consider the aims and principles that will be put forward in the review, and then they can make a decision about those, and also about the questions that are in fact asked. And we would delegate responsibility to that working group to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a first for your amendment there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to speak particularly about the amendment. I've got a couple of things. One might be just a point of clarification. I've just had sorry about this, it's an email from a colleague saying, asking if it's possible to read her email statement out. I don't think it is, because it's not been submitted. Is that right?
No, we haven't had any further statements submitted under the item under the agenda on public
And I'm assuming
participation.
Councillor O'Brien's statement was submitted
Yes.
in the proper way.
Yes.
Just want to be clear about that, so that I'm not undermining a colleague who has sent me an email, who may be watching or been involved in some conversation. So thank you for that. I think secondly, just to reiterate, really, I think there's quite a consensus in the room about some of these issues. Car parking, whichever local authority we are in, can be quite fraught, and particularly most of the time when it involves upping the prices. But actually, I think, along with my colleague Stuart Lees here, there is some good stuff in this report, and I wouldn't want to undermine any of that. But I do think that the timescale is rather short for consultation, and so maybe the end of April is not sufficient. Maybe a further month would be more satisfactory. I noticed that in the proposed recommendation from Councillor Hughes, it does say undertake a public consultation during April 24. I'm wondering whether you'd want to amend that.
That was amended to spring 2024.
Thank you.
and the second amendment was to say principle and aims of the review,
Right.
not to be used by DDC to determine parking charges, because what we realised was that we were looking at more than just parking charges.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So I'm just concerned about the consultation period, what length that might be and when that would come to an end.
What consultation period would it be after that, please?
Because currently it says April, is that right?
It currently does say April,
Yes.
but I think Councillor Hughes raises a valid point, and spring gives us some flexibility with that, given that we have Easter holidays
Yes.
in April as well. It is a short time frame. I'd be happy with spring. I think once we've decided on the form of consultation in a working group, I mean, I am speaking on behalf of the working group, not as just
Yes.
as a director, but I think once we've determined the form and the nature of the questions that we want to consult on, that would probably determine the period of time. And I think we would want to come back to members, not necessarily in a formal setting, but at least update members on a proposed time frame.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that.
Could I say, would that be just for the input, so we can assure that time frame with everyone, and presumably agree with the working group as well, so members like Councillor Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Chair, I should have been clear on that.
No,
Yeah,
that's
so
fine.
just going back, in terms of the timescales that involve what we're proposing, we will come back to members collectively once a working group has determined that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So one of the questions might be, and I've just a couple of things to say, does that proposed recommendation cover that sufficiently, do you think?
I think it does, yes.
Yes.
I
Okay.
think it does.
Just being clear.
But I think the idea is that the working group will work with officers again on
Yes.
the consultation, so that I would think that they would be working on the aims and principles by which the charges and methods are determined, possibly the broader scope of the car parking review, and then the questions themselves.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
And just finally, just to say, it is important that we get a balance between tourism and the village life. And I take Councillor O'Brien's point about Hathersage. There are other villages that we could choose where, there are certain, what do we call, venturing off points, aren't there, in the peaks and in Derbyshire Dales, where people park up, they're looking for every space they can, and often that's outside of residents' houses or very tight onto drives and those kind of things, really, and it does cause various problems. So getting that balance right, I think, is not an easy task. I think we recognise that both for officers and for the working group, but that we should make every attempt we can to preserve village life, but at the same time also make those opportunities for tourism to come to the fore. And I noticed in the report that also we have a comment about capitalising on some of that tourism in terms of charging, which I think is quite reasonable. But just to say that balance and taking account of and appreciating Councillor O'Brien's comments would be very important to everyone, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor. Oh.
It was just to come back on Councillor Bond's point in respect of representations that he may have received from other members. Obviously, as we move into debate, Councillor Bond, you're very free to share your views, and you may draw your views on that of your other colleagues as well.
Thank you. Councillor Malmstrom.
Thank you. Yeah, this is obviously a subject that everybody has an opinion on. And I'm just wondering whether there will be sort of any particular mechanism for members who perhaps are new and weren't around when the working group was just sort of set on its journey to feed in now quickly to this process. Could we be sort of given a point of contact to email and a deadline by which we should get our two penneth in if we want to say anything either on the content of the consultation or on the issues?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ash, but I have myself been contacting my representatives within the party. So I've gone through Councillor Archer and Councillor Dobbs to understand what's going on, particularly best interest in Ashbourne, to understand what's going on there. So I would expect that to be the process that others go through, is go through your representative, sat on that committee, because it is cross-party. So I would expect to feed into those guys and feed it in, and that's certainly what I've been sharing with others. Again, Ash, correct me if I'm wrong.
That would be the preferred route, Chair, absolutely. But if that representative is unavailable for whatever reason, I don't mind you contacting myself or Vicky.
Oh, Councillor Peacock first, sorry.
I was just wondering, does that work? Do we have a system of substitutes? Because I'm just conscious that we've only got one member on and the Queens as well. I've only got one member, and if that member was ill for a meeting, we'd miss out on our chance to get our opinions put forward. Do you see what I mean?
Chair, through you, if I can, absolutely. I don't believe when it was first set up there was a formal mechanism for nominating a substitute, but we would rather have somebody sat at the table representing that political party than not. So if there is a non-attendance, by all means.
Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, unfortunately, I couldn't make last night's meeting, which I'd love to have been there. But just one thing on like Councillor O'Brien raises about the pay-by-phone situation, which probably was covered last night. It was decided that some of the smaller car parks, it wasn't viable to put a pay machine in because of the cost implications, the electric implications, and that's why they went for the pay-by-phone more than anything. Ash might correct me on this one, but that was the reason why, because of the cost implications of, you know, it's easy to just put a sign up, pay by phone, number, such and such, and that's why it was done, because of basically the cost implications. So just to make you aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Anybody else? Do I have a seconder at all? If we proposed it? Councillor Ripton? If everyone's okay, I'll put that to the vote then, please.
Amendment to read the recommendation out.
Could we just read that recommendation out, please?
Shall I read it out again?
If Councillor Hughes wishes to.
If Councillor Hughes do it and we just assure it from your point of view, that'd be great. Thank you.
The committee notes the report of the Car Parking Members Working Group and approves the recommendation to undertake a public consultation during spring 2024. The purpose of the consultation is to provide Derbyshire Dales residents the opportunity to comment on the principles and aims of the review, and the Car Parking Working Group will be tasked to review and endorse all consultation materials prior to their issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Is that okay, Councillor? Seconded. And, yeah, Councillor Ripton, seconded. Could I put that to the vote then, please? Sorry.
So I take it that means that there's going to be no car park increase or anything done with the charging until after this full consultation. Is that correct?
Chair, that is absolutely my understanding, that we'll do the consultation before any decisions are made on a charging structure.
Is that okay, Councillor? I just want to make sure everyone's clear on it as well. Everyone's good. Okay. Right. If I could put that to the vote, please. Everyone for, please. Thank you very much. Can I just confirm that's unanimous? Thank you very much. Cheers for that. Thank you, everyone. On with the next item on the agenda. Yeah, I was going to say. We'll go to the internal audit progress update, please, if I may, please. Karen. Oh, sorry, not Karen. Jenny, apologies, Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is my usual report, and it covers the internal audit reports we've covered since the committee last met. It's a very positive report. If you turn to Appendix 1, you can see this time that we've issued 6 reports, one with substantial assurance, which is our top level assurance, and one with reasonable assurance, which we also see as being a positive result. Management are working on the implementation of the recommendations that we made. We'll be pleased to know we didn't discover any fraud. I always like that, to get that in. Appendix 2 then shows the whole of the 23-24 audit plan. The areas in green are the areas we've completed. Those in yellow are in progress, and those in orange we expect to complete, and red we were going to roll forward. Since writing the report, it has changed slightly. We've done slightly better on the plan than we anticipated. So the only areas that will be rolled forward to the 24-25 plan are parks and health and safety. We've got a number of audits in progress that they won't actually be completed by the end of March. They'll roll into April. But those areas are budgetary control, corporate targets, laptops and removable media, data protection and refuse collection. So those audits are in progress at the moment, as part of the 23-24 plan, and will be completed. Given that our senior auditor and auditor weren't present at the start of the year, the team have actually done really well to achieve as much as they have done on the plan. They've worked really well together and completed the vast majority of the plan and helping us to catch up, if you remember, on a period where we didn't have auditors in place. So the recommendation is the report being received and noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Jenny, you're a credit to the council for an excellent report, and also the fact that we've brought it all so forward after being quite so behind. I know we're not quite there yet, but I think it's shown excellent sort of progress. Thank you. Anyone from the floor? Councillor Wellstrom.
Possibly a really stupid question. How do you audit ethics?
We look at things that would make up ethical behaviour. So we look at things like gifts and hospitality policy, recruitment and selection procedures, declaration of business interests. Trying to wrap my brains now. There's a whole raft of things like that. Whether we'd look at, is the policies in place, is there a code of conduct, are people aware of that code of conduct, is it on your intranet for people to view, all that sort of quite a range of things.
Thank you, Jenny. Any further, councillor? Any other questions from anyone else on the report? Councillor Peacock.
How much difference is there between reasonable and substantial? And should we at some point be seeing something that shows, what we can do to get substantial on all those areas that currently have reasonable? Just wondering.
So in order to get substantial, we would only have low priority recommendations. And our priority is linked to risk. So if it's low priority, it means we think there's a very low risk and we've got specific definitions and things that fall in. If we have even one medium priority recommendation, we make it reasonable because we think there are risks that need addressing. So the recommendations we made would address that risk. So in theory, the next time we came to do the audit, if the recommendation had been implemented, if there weren't any other issues arising in between, then it would then move up to substantial. So the recommendations we've made have been agreed, and you'll also get a report probably next time showing which of those recommendations have been implemented and which are outstanding. So yes, if they're implemented, then that should move the report up to substantial for next time we review the area.
Thank you very much. Any more questions for that? Do you have a proposer at all? Councillor Hughes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Peacock. Can I put that to the vote then, please? All those for? Thank you very much. That's just to confirm. Thank you very much. That's carried. On to the next item, the internal audit plan for 24-25, please. Jenny.
Thank you. So this, I'm presenting the draft internal audit plan for approval. So I've prepared the plan taking into account the requirements of the public sector internal audit standards, and it also needs to be sufficient and comprehensive enough for me to be able to provide an audit opinion on the council's governance, risk and control arrangements. So the draft plan has been discussed with the 151 officer and the management team. As I said earlier, we have rolled forward a couple of areas from the 23-4 plan into the 24-25 plan. So there's quite a lot of things that are considered when we're completing the plan. So one's the length of time since the last audit. We have a look at your strategic risk register and your operational risk register. We take on board any areas management think we ought to be looking at, any new areas of risk, any potential reputational damage. So high risk areas we review more often, and low risk areas, may only be looked at every 5 years. So we've got 340 days available, and that's based on having a full-time senior auditor and a full-time auditor. So Appendix 1, that shows the recommended plan for 24-25, and just so that you can get an idea of the range of areas we look at, it also shows what areas we looked at in 23-24 and the areas we anticipate looking at in 25-26 and 26-27, but they will be revisited because obviously things change and priorities change and risks change. But the last column identifies the main risks for each area. So this plan will enable us to continue to catch up on areas that sort of fell behind a bit when we didn't have any audit staff. It is based on being fully staffed and it is quite a challenging plan. New for this year, as one example, is we have got Ashbourne Reborn in there, so we'll be looking at the governance arrangements in respect of that. So that's the plan I'm recommending for approval. If there are any major changes that we feel are needed, I will come back to this committee for approval for that. So I'm also asking it's noted that the plan is provisional and it's possible it'll need adjusting if there's any major changes or risks that emerge during the year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jenny. Just to understand, what would those potential risks be for change if throughout the year? I think flooding and things like that. What would necessitate a change?
Yes,
please?
possibly, I suppose, or if there's a big business continuity issue. Okay. Gosh, it could be any range of things. A contract that was going drastically wrong, okay. Or hopefully not, but
no, hopefully not. Thank you very much. Cheers for that. Thank you for that clarifying. Are there any questions? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Jenny. It's a very interesting report again. Ashbourne Reborn. The 3 organisations involved in that effectively, ourselves, the County Council and the Methodist Church, and then there will be multiple subcontractors associated with the project as well. I was wondering where your boundary is within that project. Is it Derbyshire Dales, or does it include the 2 other major organisations involved who are delivering the schemes?
I mean, what we'd be looking at would be the corporate governance arrangements in place. So what the reporting processes, what rules are going to be followed, what the project manager, what they're doing in terms of the Derbyshire County Council and was it Methodist Church, was it? Yes. So we wouldn't be directly going to the Methodist Church and Derbyshire County Council, but we'd be looking what this council had in place to make sure that the arrangements were working and, you know, budgetary control and whose procurement rules were being used has all been set out.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Jenny. Anybody else? Councillor Ripton.
Well, one of our, I guess, biggest emerging risks, almost existential risk, is the potential funding gap that we know is coming, I guess, to some extent outside of our control. But would that feature somewhere, or how does that manifest itself, if not this year, in future years?
Say, Jenny or Karen,
Sorry.
I'm not sure.
That's not normally something we'd expect internal audit to address, although as part of the processes for looking at budgetary control and so on, they would look at what we do in that regard. But the scrutiny on that comes from the external auditor. You'll remember one of the things that they do is report on what they call value for money arrangements, and as part of that exercise, they look at our arrangements for financial resilience and so on. So I think they reported that at the last meeting of this committee. Yeah.
Anyone else? Can I just check on that? Do we have a risk register as well that we keep for that as well? I thought we did. Yeah. Thank you. Do I have any proposals then at all? Councillor Ripton. Do I have a seconder at all, please? Councillor Lane's. Councillor Franks. Right. Thank you very much. And can I put that to the vote then, please? Everyone for? Thank you very much. Just to confirm, unanimous. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jenny. Now, thank you. On to the statement of accounts, please, for 23-24. Approval of accounting policies, this is, with regards to accounting for this year, for 23-24. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this is quite a straightforward report. It's good practice to ask members to endorse the accounting policies that we're proposing to use for the statement of accounts that we'll be beginning to produce in a couple of weeks. So the proposed policies are shown as Appendix 1 to the report. They're not very different to the policies that we used for the 22-23 accounts. Paragraph 2.4 explains that there were some minor changes requested by the external auditor. I think those are shown in red on page 64 of your pack. And also the external auditor suggested that we remove some policies that didn't really apply to Derbyshire Dales anymore, including the policies for foreign currency translation and interest in companies and other entities, because we don't engage in those. So, yes, we're happy asking you to approve the accounting policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Is there any questions around that at all? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, sorry, just one question about the changes. Will they result in a material change in the numbers that would be presented in the asset register on the balance sheet?
They could potentially result in change in terms of the asset valuations, but as far as I'm aware, they're not significant changes. I mean, the report does mention IFRS 16 that will be coming into the following year's accounts. Now, that's likely to make a more substantial difference to the balance sheet because it'll be bringing things onto balance sheet. But these accounting policies for 23-24 shouldn't make a significant difference.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Anybody else? Do I have a proposer at all? For... Councillor Hughes, propose. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Linthwaite. Thank you. All those for, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Cheers for that. Thank you, Karen. On to the next revenue budget monitoring for Q3 of the financial year 23-24. Thank you very much, Karen.
So this shows our forecast outturn position as at Q3. So basically, we're taking the financial information that we've got up to the end of December and projecting it forward to forecast what might happen by the end of the year. You can see from the report that we're forecasting an underspend of £1.8 million for the current year, and the reasons for that are shown in the table in paragraph 1.3. The main reasons are £1 million worth of extra investment income and around £800,000 net underspend on the waste contract. Paragraph 1.17 suggests some ways that might be used. Our usual practice is to ask the committee to endorse that the underspend be transferred to specific reserves. This will need to be determined by council at the end of the year when we know the actual outturn, but having, if you like, a plan for the forecast underspend helps the accounting team to prepare the draft financial statements with members' wishes in mind. So of the £1.8 million, it's proposed to transfer £48,691 to the elections reserve. That amount arises from an underspend on elections. It's proposed to transfer £500,000 into the waste vehicle replacement reserve. I'm sure members will remember that we're trying to build up money to buy new waste vehicles when the contract comes to an end. £500,000 is to be transferred to recruitment and retention reserve. I want to explain to members that the intention of that isn't to pay existing staff more. The intention is to set aside some money that can be used to plug gaps and increase capacity, so that when members want to deliver or want officers to deliver some of the things in the corporate plan, then there's some funding there to increase capacity. £225,000 to the corporate plan priority reserve. I think that'll take the balance to about £850,000. Again, for funding towards implementing the corporate plan priorities, and the remainder to the capital programme reserve. You'll be aware that we're running out of funding for capital So that's why we came up with those proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much for that. That's very articulate. Any questions around that at all? Councillor Ripton, sorry.
I'm all for sort of adding headcount that increases the firepower of the council to do the things we want to do. I guess the question is, what's the mechanism for making sure we've got the right roles being brought forward to access the funding? Because I'm always nervous about just putting pots of cash aside without necessarily being clear how it's allocated or how you draw down on it.
I think that's linked to the work that CLT and Paul Wilson in particular have been doing alongside the scrutiny committee to look at what extra is needed to make sure we've got adequate capacity. For example, we might be looking to roll out areas in the corporate plan, and we might find out that certain teams haven't got the capacity to deliver everything that's required. So the intention would be that perhaps some of the funding was put to get an extra resource into that team for a temporary period and to help deliver those actions. So that's a process that CLT have started already. We've been looking at the things in the corporate plan, the things in the capital programme, and so on, trying to work out where the areas of pressure are.
Certainly, would you like to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. I attempt a simple answer, a very complex question, and to build on Karen's point. So we're going through a bit of a stage process now in which to look at where we currently are, where we need to be, and the bit that's in the middle, which is sometimes quite difficult to define. As part of that approach as well, we've commissioned some baseline assessments across all of the council service areas to look at what we're spending in certain areas, and particularly looking at the cost of delivering our statutory services, which we must deliver to a good standard, and those that are not statutory, and looking at the ways in which we can possibly deliver those with the current resources or with a different model altogether. I think that's really important that we've got that visibility, and we also provide that visibility to members to understand what are statutory services and what aren't, and how we're currently delivering them. So that will provide us with that baseline of information to then start to look at how can we best provide these services, but also looking at the sort of financial climate as we move into not the next financial year, but certainly the financial year after that, which is not as rosy as the last few years have been for this council, but ways in which we can try and safeguard those services as much as we possibly can against a backdrop of fairly intensive cuts from within a very small organisation and a very small operating model as it currently is. But I think there are some short-term opportunities for us to rapidly increase capacity where we need to against some of the areas in the corporate plan that have been clearly articulated by members that they're wanting to see progress on. We've discussed car parks today, and Ash is here and has articulated as well some of the challenges that we have in certain parts of the organisation where lots of things are hitting at the same sort of time. We need to relieve those pressures, but also think more long term about how we can build up capacity to some of the bigger things that are coming down the track. And I look to my colleague at the end again around our waste contract and also a future of our leisure contract, which requires a build-up of not just capacity but capability. These are complex and intense pieces of work, and we need to make sure that we've got a resource model in the council to take us through those periods. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions at all? Do I have a proposer at all? Councillor Bond, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ripton. Can I have all those four, please? Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And move on now. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Moving on to the review of Derbyshire Dale's safeguarding policy, please, Ash, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'd like to keep it brief, if I may. The report is recommending that members adopt the revised safeguarding policy that is outlined in Appendix 1. And the policy is only a slight revision on a previous or policy that is currently in place, and the reason for that is we have been an active member of the Derbyshire Safeguarding Board and the working group for quite a number of years. And it was agreed a few years ago that we would work towards having not necessarily a county-wide policy, but where we could, there would be an alignment across the districts and the boroughs to the authority responsible for adult and children's services. In this case, it's Derbyshire County Council. So on the last policy, we made quite significant revisions to align our policy to the county councils, as they are the lead authority in this area. We were also one of 3 authorities that were tasked with this work and working with other boroughs and districts. In terms of our policy, it is in the main changes to terminology and modernising the policy to reflect changes in the structure of safeguarding in Derbyshire. There are examples in the report where we have changed terminology. For example, the changing of vulnerable adults to adults at risk. And also another key point in there that we have reflected is where we've tried to build in resilience within the organisation. Previously, there was one lead safeguarding officer, which was myself, but other colleagues were involved in safeguarding matters, colleagues from housing, colleagues from environmental services, environmental health, and also in our community safety team. What we've done is formalised a corporate safeguarding group where we're able to share experiences, knowledge, and build that resilience and expertise. So should we have an incident, which, to be clear, there are very few incidents in the Derbyshire Dales that get reported to the district council, then there is always somebody available to take that forward and work with the lead authority. I don't think there's anything else I need to say on this policy, Chair, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Ash. Any questions from anyone? Oh, Councillor Mel. Go on, Councillor Maelstrom first.
Thank you. Ash, there's a lot of bodies referred to in this policy, and this is not an area that I'm familiar with at all. So I'm just wondering if there's scope for perhaps an addendum for anybody reading this document to understand who called Derbyshire are, what starting point is, who oversees those bodies. Are they county council bodies? Are they district? Just a little bit more background as to who's who really would, I think, be helpful to the reader.
Chair, absolutely. That's it's a sound observation, Councillor Maelstrom. I'll feed that back to the team. We did cover some of those points in the member workshop, but I think it's right. This policy will be in place for 4 years, so to have the information at hand would be helpful. So we'll make those adjustments. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it would be good for us as councillors to understand it better as well. To be honest with you, I think that's a good thing. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a slightly pedantic comment, really. Normally what I would be used to in a policy, and again, it is slightly pedantic. So for instance, where legislation is mentioned, the relevant section is also mentioned. So, for instance, I'll give you 2 examples. On page 5 of the policy, it says child in need. That would be section 17 of the Children Act 1989, rather than just referring to the Act in general. And in terms of the Equality Act 2010, it would refer to section 4 when we're thinking about protected characteristics. And I would just be used to that. And I don't know if you would want to make any amendments to the policy where it also refers to the GDPR and stuff like that, where the relevant section is referred to. It is quoted, but the actual section is also quite useful, and that's what I would be normally quite used to, and just draw that to attention.
Chair, if I can, again, very valid point, Councillor, thank you. On the second recommendation, there is the suggestion that delegated authority be passed to myself and members of the corporate safeguarding team to make updates and adjustments. If members are happy, we will include that in the adjustment to the policy.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Councillor Ripton.
Can I just clarify also, in the world I inhabit on a daily basis, vulnerability is quite a broad thing. And I note your point about changing the terminology to adult at risk. So can I just clarify, the policy doesn't reduce the protection from a sort of broad vulnerability to a narrower adult at risk? Is it just terminology, or has it actually changed the extent of the protection, if that makes sense?
It's changing the terminology, Councillor, in the main. There's a clear criteria to what was children and at risk and now adults at risk. There is a clear criteria that we have to work towards. We're not the authority on that. It doesn't necessarily reduce the people who will be affected by this, but there are different measures that we have to take in terms of how we can refer people, who we can refer and who we can't without permissions, for example, for adults.
Thank you. Does that answer you? Thank you. Any more questions at all?
Chair,
Councillor Hughes.
just a question really about process, not about the paper itself, and it's something that applies to each of the papers tonight. We've had quite a lot of amendments, but it's actually difficult to spot where the amendments are without reading well, you can't find the amendments because they're not noted. I wondered if there's a way we can note the actual changes to reports. I mean, Word, you can do track changes, and it shows every change in a paper, and that allows you then just to go through, if something has been passed already, just to go through the changes that have been made and look at those changes alone, and it might speed up the process of reading the reports and commenting on them.
Yeah. I think we're going to keep that in mind. So, not too sure how we measure that going forward or pick up on it.
I think it's just being mindful that if further policies are coming forward, is maybe just to have the old policy and then the new policy with the track changes for amendment. I think there is a proportionality bit here around, and again the safeguarding policy is a good one, in that members sort of agree the overall themes, and then if there are changes to legislation that will ultimately impact on the reports that isn't within the auspices of members to determine, but we have to be forced to make those changes, it's reasonable and efficient for officers just to get on and make those amendments. Where there are things that are quite fundamental, I think that's a good way of making those amendments and it being clear to them what is the old version and what is the new version. So we'll definitely do that in future if it's possible to do so.
No, thank you. Yeah. That's great. Thank you. And any of those adjustments as well, if they get that submitted as well, that'd be great. I suppose if we any proposers at all, unless there's any further questions, apologies. Proposer anyone? Councillor Bond, any seconder? Councillor Lees. Could I have everyone for, please? Yep. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ash. And now moving on to item 13, which again is probably yourself, is the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme 3C Energy Efficiency Improvements in Northwood Depot. Oh, actually, is it Karen who's doing this one? Even though, sorry, apologies.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So this is a report that's come to this committee because it relates to some grant funding that was offered a short time ago. Normally this report would have gone to the Community Environment Committee, but there wasn't the time to get it to the meeting on the 6th of March. So this is a bid for an item in the capital programme, and the Council's financial regulations set out the process for that, and one of the steps is that new bids should be considered by policy committees before being referred to Council for inclusion in the programme. So this particular scheme relates to decarbonisation at the Northwood Depot. The cost is estimated to be £153,137. We've been offered a grant for a third, £51,380, and the rest could be financed from capital receipts, £101,757. The report explains what the work would entail, and it is in compliance with meeting the climate change objective. So we're hoping that members will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. No, this is splendid stuff that we're starting to do, that I think we're all supporting of trying to do, be a more greener council. Any questions from the floor? No? Do I have a proposer at all then? Councillor Postrom, thank you. Do I have a seconder at all, please? Oh, Councillor Linthwaite, thank you very much. And I'll put that ever in voting for, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's voted through. And on to the next one, which is Karen again for arrears for write-off in 23-24.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks authority to write off one amount of £12,171.81 in respect of a housing benefit overpayment. The report itself also provides members with some background information about the write-offs that I've approved under delegated authority, and it also shows in paragraph 2.5 the collection rates to date and so on. The item that I'm asking members to approve the write-off for relates to a benefit overpayment. So basically, it relates to a deceased person and there is insufficient funds in their estate to clear the debt. So we're coming for write-off.
Thank you, Karen. Is there any other questions from the floor at all? Councillor Wellstrom.
Thanks, yeah. I completely understand why this sum isn't recoverable, but there's nothing in the report to explain why it accrued in the first place, and why, what sort of period of time, and who's responsible for monitoring the payment of housing benefit.
So the report, the report arose because of a housing benefit overpayment, and basically the claimant received a lump sum pension payment that they didn't immediately declare to us. It was found through one of our checks, and that meant that they had been receiving benefit when they weren't entitled to it. So that's how it arose. Originally, the debt was about £14,000. If you just bear with me, sorry, I thought I had this open, but it seems to have closed itself. So the debt was originally £14,512.78, and it arose in, to read it, so it arose in 2023. The pension service had cancelled the pension credit back to 2010, so it went back a long way. The period of the overpayment covered went from 15th of March 2010 to the 9th of January 2023. Invoices were issued at the time, we found out, on the 18th of May 2023 with a letter explaining when the overpayment occurred, and reduced housing benefit payments continued until the gentleman of the house died in 26th of July 23. But at the same time, his wife became a permanent resident at a care home. So housing benefit was then cancelled because they were no longer living in the property. Reminders were issued to the lady while she was in the care home, but no payments were made. And then she subsequently died on the 7th of September 2023. Her family made some payments, £30 a month and a £500 lump sum payment, but then we were informed that there was no further funds in the estate.
Thank you, Karen. If you have any further questions, thank you. No, thank you for that. Any further questions from anyone? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. On that one, are there any lessons that we should learn about that sort of situation?
One of the things we try to do is to prevent housing benefit overpayments occurring in the first place, which is why we carry out regular checks on housing benefit claimants' income and on their savings and so on. So that's done. I think the issue with this one was that it was the pension service that found this error or whatever, and it was them making the adjustment to her pension and then backdating it to 2010 that caused this recalculation to arise. I don't think there's anything we could have done to have foreseen that. As soon as we knew, we acted on it. She would have been offered a payment plan. She wouldn't have been expected to pay all that at once.
Thank you. The second question, I noticed that the council tax is proportion that is collected is going down steadily. I think we were originally thought it was to do with COVID, but it seems to have continued to decline. Is there anything, I mean, it's gone down 1% since 2018-19. Is there anything that we can do to bring that back up to the target, which we're now 0.6% below?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the revenues team are still trying to collect. I think originally there was a lag in collections because of the coronavirus pandemic. Members will recall that at that time we took the decision not to take court action in any cases because we didn't feel it was appropriate. The coronavirus pandemic has now passed, but we've got the cost of living crisis. And I think that's why some people are struggling to pay. The revenues team are taking action on arrears for both the current year and previous years. One of the issues we've had recently is that some court dates have been cancelled. So that's meant we couldn't obtain liability orders to pursue the debts further and use further methods of recovery, such as appointing enforcement agents. So we are about to discuss that problem with the courts to see what can be done about that. It's difficult to say at this stage, you know, if the court had have happened, what the outcome would be, but it would have made some difference. They are only just under target in some of the areas, some of the years, and I'm hoping that it will pick up. You know, if they don't stop recovery action at the end of each financial year, they do continue. Bills have just gone out again, of course, that will have previous years' arrears on them. So we're hoping that might encourage some people to pay. Again, as I've said earlier, as for the housing benefits, the council tax team do offer payment arrangements for people that are in difficulties. And also they tell them about the council tax support scheme.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Franks.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the pension overpayment and that you think it's a one-off. At the moment, there's been a lot of publicity about there's an awful lot of women that are owed a lot of money by the pension service and they're very gradually working through them. And I think there are going to be other incidences that occur in the very near future where some women are going to get massive payments, which could again put us in them in the situation they've made overpayments, and it's getting the message across that they may end up owing some money in raise of council tax, and how we deal with that and deal with I suppose the media in relation to that.
That's a really good point. I've read about the WASPI claims. So yeah, they would be in the same situation if they receive a large compensation payment. Yeah. So it's not only housing benefit that would affect, it's council tax support as well.
Councillor Ripton and Councillor Bond. Sorry.
Can I just clarify on that? Danger of going down a rabbit hole here, but I think what I'm hearing is because this person was underpaid for a period of time by her pension, she was given a pension lump sum, which then effectively breached the housing benefit. But are we clear that had she been drip-fed the right amount of pension, she would still have been entitled to housing benefit? In which case, technically, have we done the right thing, if you see where I'm going with this?
I'm not able to say that without knowing the exact figures and how it would have affected each year.
Because I get,
So it's something I can look
I
into.
guess it's an absolute breach if you have
yeah.
a lump sum you're not entitled to, but it's well, sorry, it's a technical breach, but it's not a breach in spirit, is it? Because effectively this person's being put in the position they would have been had they had the money drip fed and possibly still been in, eligible for benefits. So maybe something we just need to double
I can
check.
ask the benefits managers to look into that.
Thank you, Karen. If you take that as an action, next, Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a general note, really, that the importance of sharing and disseminating information regarding hardship and the fund that we have to offset some of the difficulties, noting that during and post-COVID, mental health has increased significantly, and one of the outcomes of severe mental health is that people do not always assimilate and act upon information that they receive. There are many long-standing cases of people who cannot open their post and issues like that because of issues of mental health, depression and so on, and anxiety, and that it's easy to fall into the spiral of non-payment when that becomes another added issue on top of many other things. So again, just a plea to make sure that we are making sure that the information regarding hardship and that we can help and that we can spread costs and that we can offset some of those costs around council tax is shared widely across the authority.
Could I ask that we reshare some of that through the comms team at all, please? And just as a side note on that, have we seen any increase in people applying for hardship grants?
Was it about £120,000 that put aside?
So we've got, I think it's £20,000
Oh, 20,000,
in the
sorry.
council tax support hardship scheme. So the basic council tax support scheme gives 91.5% council tax support, leaving 8.5% of the bill for the resident to pay. So the council tax support hardship fund can be used to offset part or, in most cases, all of that remaining balance. So as far as I know, that's on track to be spent this year. I've made it quite clear to the benefits manager that if it looks likely that we've not got sufficient in that fund, he can come back and I'll come back to council to top it up. The other fund that we've got is a discretionary housing payment fund, and again that can be used to top up people's benefits, people's housing benefit. So I'll have a word with the benefits manager and we'll see if we can issue more comms.
And just a quick aside, if I may, Chair, clearly there are other organisations that can help with things like debt relief orders and so on, not just the CAB but others. And again, you know, that information is very important, I think, to be shared with people where there are significant difficulties. Thank you.
Absolutely agreed, and there's some excellent work that the CAB do as well.
Yeah, we do signpost people to the CAB.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're aware of any other organisations, Councillor Bond, if you want to drop me an email, I can make sure that we mention them.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Hughes first.
Thank you. Can I just, I think I'm trying to understand what went on. So the lady was, or the gentleman was underpaid for a number of years and then got a lump sum. Is that correct?
What it says is, so when I asked how was the original overpayment identified, it said the original claimant, which was the gentleman, was advised of an overpayment that was generated following a routine check showing a lump sum pension payment had been made to his wife in 2023.
In 2023.
But of course it's the household income that's taken
Yes.
into account. And it says the pension service cancelled her guaranteed pension credit back to 2010 as she'd been paid incorrectly.
Does that mean she had to pay back her pension credit?
I don't know. We probably wouldn't be informed of that.
It's just, it seems to me that I wonder whether she had to pay tax on the lump sum that she received.
We wouldn't know that.
We wouldn't know that. But it seems that it's income in the year, and I don't see how in the previous years she didn't have that income, so she needed the support that we gave her, and in order for her not to be at risk. And then it seems to be, for me, it doesn't seem to be fair to then say, well, we're going to take back all of that money because retrospectively you weren't at risk. But she was at risk at that time and she would have been stressed by it. And therefore it just seems to be really quite unfair. And surely we should only be considering the income in the year when the for the benefit.
Don't forget, this is part of the housing benefit scheme, and those rules are set by the Department for Work and Pensions. I can discuss with the housing benefit manager whether we've got any discretion, but yeah. I expect he would just be following the DWP rules. Okay,
but it seems to me that writing this off is the fairest thing we could do, yes. and that it's a paper loss, it's not a real loss, because we had never any prospect of getting this money, and we provided the money with good intentions and in line with the rules that were in operation at the time. So I just find it really quite incomprehensible and unfair that government rules should claw back money that they'd mistakenly or possibly mistakenly given to her. It's not good.
I'm inclined to agree, which is why I've brought the request for write-off.
No, thank you. So, Councillor Linthwaite.
It was really just a bit of a background information, really, to help people perhaps understand a bit more how this might have come about. There was a whole tranche of women who were incorrectly assessed for their pensions, their state pensions. There were almost exclusively women who had taken periods of time off work for childcare or who had long periods of part-time work and incomplete national insurance records. So when their basic state pension was miscalculated, that then brought them into things like pension premium and other gateway benefits, including housing benefit, council tax benefit, all of that sort of thing. So then when the error was identified, there were lots of women who were owed thousands of pounds in back pension, which was then given as a lump sum, which then recalculates all those previous years and the other gateway benefits that they've had. But also some of them fell foul of the savings limits. So it was a huge error. Yes, they're still working through the backlog of women who are owed pension money. So there are almost certainly going to be other cases. So yes, I agree. The only fair way is to say it wasn't their error, they didn't do anything dishonest, and it's only fair that we should write off the...
No, thank you, Councillor. And just from my point, I'll come to you in a sec. Basically was to say that, is there any way that we can monitor this? Because it feels like we might potentially have further cases of this in the future to do that?
Yes, we should be able to do that.
That'd be great, thank you. Thank you, sorry, Councillor Malstrom. Oh, is that, yeah. Because it just feels like it's an injustice that's likely to happen again, and I don't want it to happen while we're here, certainly. Thank you. Do I have anyone to move that, please? Councillor Linthwaite. Seconder? Councillor Franks. Thank you very much. Everyone for? Thank you very much. And that's the item on agenda. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your time. Thanks all. Sorry, actually, I realised we should have probably rearranged it slightly because you would kind of have one at the beginning and one right at the end.
Usual, sure. Well, the thing is